Hello everybody, this is Hammer Striker here. I've got a couple of the high capacity micro compact 380s on the table. Please don't forget to check out our website. Go to our affiliates page. You'll find discount codes for things like Mantis X and Core belts. Link to that cool little bore light that we use for lighting up the barrels. Use those links. It will often save you money, never will cost you any additional money, and helps the channel. Thank you. This one here is the Ruger LCP Max, which is really just an evolution of the LCP that's been around for a very long time. Really an evolution of the LCP2 because it has the upgraded fire control on it. And then the one behind it is the P365 chambered in 380. And if you look at this, you really wouldn't be able to tell the difference between this and the 9mm. And I think that's on purpose. So let's start with taking both of these and popping up the magazines and making sure that they're not all going to be bitey. That one is clear, and that one is clear. So we'll start with the magazines. So the P365 comes with two 10-round magazines that are flush. Nice, well-constructed 10-round magazines. So it comes packaged with two of them. Now, of course, over time, I'm sure they'll have different variations in different marketing packages because SIG's notorious for marketing packages. But it's basically a two-finger grip. There's not enough of a ledge there for your pinky, so it's just going to kind of hang free. Now, they do have 12-round magazines available on their site. I don't think they were available day one, but they became available. And you've kind of got 2 and maybe 3/4 finger grip, even if you're all the way up on it. It does have a nice undercut under the trigger. It lets you get up there a little bit higher, but it is a small gun. It's intended to be a small gun. But when you look at it, the only thing that tells you it's a 380 is the barrel stamping. There's nothing on any part of the gun right there. 380 ACP. There's nothing on any part of the gun that says P365 380. They all just say P365 or XL, which this isn't available in the XL yet, but it wouldn't surprise me if they do come out with that. And I think it's because, for all real purposes, this is the 9mm body. So it's probably the 9mm slide, frame, and everything else. It's just the barrel that's different. Really just the chamber. To the point that this will actually work with all the 9mm accessories, holsters and everything else, that it'll fit right in. So if you decided to get the 380 and you already had a 9mm, you're not going to have to rebuy all your accessories. It does have the Sig Picatinny rail. It's not actually a Picatinny rail, it's a Sig rail, and it doesn't take Picatinny accessories because there is no notch on it. Unfortunately, that's proprietary. It requires things that are adapted to the Sig rail, but the aftermarket has really kind of caught up with Sig for quite a long time, so there's a lot of accessories available. It is optics ready, right from the factory. There's no optics ready version, they're just optics ready. That's the way they come. And it has the Sig Light night sights, so they're a tritium dot in the middle with a white ring around it. Really easy to see sights. Its competitor here is the LCP Max. It doesn't have quite so nice of a sight. It has a nice front sight, tritium with a ring, blackout rear sight. There is a big enough gap that you can find the front sight, but you have to work for it. What I found is I had to work for the groups that I got. Talking about the magazines, really kind of a short grip. There's less of an undercut, so the grip itself is shorter. There's no place to put your pinky. It's just going to hang there. Now they do have a pinky extender version of it. This is the extended magazine. There is a pinky extender available. I don't happen to have one. But it comes with 2 magazines. It comes with the 10-round and it comes with the 12-round. The 12-round kind of hangs down. It's not a perfect integration, but the front is reasonably integrated. There is a kind of a more of a gap there than you might expect, but I didn't actually ever get pinched. But when I grip it, you end up with kind of, again, 2 3/4 finger grip. And I think just the way it positions, it doesn't put your finger, at least with me shooting it, doesn't put your finger in that gap, and I didn't get pinched by this gun. Now what I did have happen with this is, depending on who was shooting it and the size of their hands, they had a tendency to bump the magazine release. Whether it was the 10 or 12 round mag, it didn't matter a little bit. But you notice I kind of just touched it a little bit, and my hand's there, so the magazine just pops down. Of course now it's not going to chamber around or work correctly. So if you are thinking about getting one of these, you're going to need to handle it and go like you were firing it and see if you're going to catch that magazine release, because it's real light. It doesn't take much at all to pop that. It's nice that it's light, it's easy to change, but it sticks up just enough and it's just light enough that if parts of your hand or your support hand are in there, you might catch that. The other issue we had, this one locked back. If I grab this magazine, of course now it'll probably make a lighter out of it. There it goes, it's not locking back. They had an issue with both the 10 and 12 round magazines when these first came out, not locking back. And they did fix it, so if you get one now, you're not going to have that problem. They corrected some things on the magazine. On this particular gun, I called them up and they sent me replacement magazines to solve the problem. But if you look at reviews on early ones, including our review on this, that was an active problem at the time. At this point, that's pretty much kind of a moot point. They have rectified that, and it was kind of a Gen 1 issue that they've dealt with and taken care of. From other ergonomics of it, this one is very melted. Everything is rounded, even the sights. Notice the sights at the back are very rounded. So as you go to pull it, it's not going to want to catch on things. Things are going to want to roll across it rather than snagging on it. The front of the sight, which of course is not involved in the pull, is kind of very flat and sticks up just enough. You can actually belt or boot cock this particular gun. But when you go to yank it, everything will be snag free. Even the edges are beveled. So everything on this is just kind of rounded and smoothed to make it easy to draw and also easy to carry. It's not going to press up against parts of you and you're not going to have edges sticking up against you. When you move to the Sig is less melted. It's got some rounded edges, but it is more angular. The sights are kind of squarish at the back, but they are kind of smoothed. So this might be a little more likely to snag, but the angle is going to try to help make something ride off. The front of the sights is angled, which doesn't help with much of anything at that point, but it does kind of prevent you from belt cocking or boot cocking. The front flat part is kind of short enough that it's going to slide off. So you lose the ability to boot and belt cock these, but you really don't pick up a lot of that melted nature. So this one may be a little bit more inclined to snag as you pull it. The Sig has a little bit better undercut under the trigger, and you saw that when I gripped it. I could get up there. But despite that, it's still, both of these have really open trigger guards so that you have lots of room for if you're wearing gloves, especially if you're in a northern climate where it's colder and you're having to wear gloves. The one thing that you will look at on these is there are differences in size. Some dimensions not so significant, others very significant. This is 0.8 inches thick, the Ruger, and the Sig is 1.0 inches thick. Now you might think, well, that's not a big deal, both are really thin guns, and you'd actually be correct. But if you're looking for that deep concealed pocket carry, especially in dress pants or possibly on an ankle, that 0.2 inches can make a big difference in whether or not the gun hides well, especially with all the smoothing on it. It's going to be less likely to print than the Sig. The other dimensions are a lot closer. The Sig is 5.7 inches long front to back, and the Ruger is 5.7. So 5.8, 5.7. I may have misspoken. Sig is 5.8, Ruger is 5.7. The Sig is 4.12 inches tall. Oh, I got the wrong magazine. Let me put the flush mag in the Sig. Give the Sig actually a fair chance at winning that, which it won't quite win. I'm going to do it this way. A little bit clumsy there. Won't quite win. The Sig at the front is a little bit taller because it ends up coming out to being 4.2 and the Ruger is 4.12. Now at the back, the heel of the gun, which is typical of these P365s, they're angled, is lower. You can see right there it's lower. Might make it a little bit easier to pull, at least from the grip, but even the back of the Ruger is very rounded and very melted. So overall, I still think the Ruger is going to stay ahead and less likely to snag on things. So I just noticed something. I noticed when I wrote down the dimensions of the Ruger, I'd screwed up and forgot a 1 in a very important position. This is not 5.7 inches long. It's 5.17 inches long. So you can see there is more of a significant length difference between the two. And of course I corrected that on the video during post where I said it the first time. But it was when I set them side by side, I looked at it and said there's no way that there's a 1/10 of an inch difference. That's just not possible. So we recorrect that. It's 5.8 for the Sig and 5.17 for the Ruger. So that's going to make a difference when you're trying to pocket carry or ankle carry it as far as the dimensions. From an MSRP standpoint, the Sig is $589 and the Ruger is $469. Now, interestingly enough, the Ruger was $449 MSRP, and the MSRP jumped up 20 bucks. So the Ruger is still less expensive, however you look at it. From a reliability perspective, both of these have been reliable once you get rid of some initial things. So the Ruger had some magazine issues in the beginning. The P365, first time we took it to the range, had a few failed loads in the first couple mags. But once we put some ammo through it, those went away. So the Sig's issue I'm going to consider a break-in period and basically ignore it. It went away in the first range session. The Ruger I'm going to consider a first generation kind of thing. The manufacturer solved it. To the best of my knowledge, people are not still having that problem with the Rugers, and the replacement magazines they sent me do work reliably. So both of these I'm going to consider reliable. I don't mind break-in periods. I kind of ignore them if they're short, especially for small guns. It's harder to make a small gun work properly than a big gun. From a safety perspective, both of these are advertised by the manufacturer as drop safe. The Ruger does have the inertial pull safety, which the Sig lacks, but that's not unusual with Sig. They try to focus on lighter triggers and eliminating the inertia. Most other manufacturers use some sort of dongle or split trigger hinge to eliminate that. Internally, they do have the drop safety plungers. The P365 is available with a thumb safety should you choose one, but overall these are designed to be drop safe, and I haven't heard of either one of these firing unintentionally when dropped. The LCP's been around for quite a long time. One internal difference, however, is the LCP is a hammer-fired gun that behaves like a striker gun. In fact, you wouldn't know it was a hammer gun if you didn't know that. And the P365 is a striker gun. So let's talk about these triggers. Get rid of these magazines. So the trigger on the Sig has a noticeable amount of take-up. Then you come to a wall. A tiny bit of creep through the wall, but it's real smooth. Nice reset. It kind of pushes your finger forward. You get a nice click, and it's a very short reset. And then you're right on the wall, and then you get that same hair creep, nice and smooth, and pull through the wall. So overall, the Sig has a very nice trigger. The Ruger, significant amount of take-up. Kind of a heavy wall that almost has a little bit of stacking. As I'm pulling, it goes and then it kind of ends, and it does hit a stop right there that over travel stops. So it's a short break, but it's kind of a little bit odd. Kind of a longer reset with a bit of a click, but you don't feel it. Take up to get back on the wall, and then again it's kind of stacks a little bit as I pull through it, and then it fires. So I would say the trigger on the Ruger is nice, but the trigger on the P365 is better. From a safety perspective, both should be roughly equivalent. What I did find is, overall, shooting them, both were nice to shoot. The Ruger was surprisingly comfortable to shoot despite being so small. You didn't really have a whole lot of snap, just a little bit, but it was actually relatively comfortable. It didn't really beat your hand up like a lot of these small guns will. But combination of the trigger being just a little weird and that blackout rear sight, I had to work for my groups. So on this gun, I pulled good groups once I practiced with it a while. So if you buy this, plan to spend some time with it to get used to it, learn how it works. The P365 works like a P365, and I'm not being sarcastic. It works like the 9mm. It behaves like the 9mm, just a lot less recoil. It feels like a 22 at the range. The recoil is so mild on it, and those sights are really good, and that trigger is really good, that I actually found that I was able to shoot it well right from the beginning. Of course, you also add a little bit of weight. This weighs 15.7 ounces, and the Ruger weighs 10.6. Now that's kind of a double-edged sword. This is going to absorb the recoil with that extra weight, but now if this thing's swinging around on your ankle, you're going to want the Ruger probably for that significantly lower weight. So from a pocket gun, ankle gun perspective, deep conceal, the Ruger is going to kind of pull ahead. If you're going to put this thing inside the waistband, immediately I would go to the P365. it's not enough bigger and enough heavier over the Ruger to make a difference in that position, versus being much easier to shoot well, smoother to shoot, and easier to pull tight groups. My first groups with this were as good as my last groups with this. I didn't have to work at it. I just pointed it at the direction of the target and pulled the trigger and started putting holes where I wanted them. So overall, I think the P365 overall is a better choice, unless the problem you're trying to solve is you need the lightest, smallest gun possible. Pocket possibly, and ankle carry. Even though this actually would work well in a pocket. The Ruger is going to kind of pull ahead in that case. But if that's not the problem you're trying to solve, the P365 kind of wins it for just overall usability and comfort. Overall, they both have a purpose, but this kind of does one thing really well, and this kind of does lots of things really well. Beyond that, if you like our videos, please give us a thumbs up, share, subscribe, click that bell up there to be notified if you do. Check us out on Facebook, Patreon, Instagram, Twitter, Getter, kind of everywhere. And thank you.
Jammed.
Oh. Last round.
No, I usually pick everything up. Hold on, don't worry about it. No. That's my, no, that's my. No, push it out. It's fine. Good.